All right, in this video, we are going to talk about the unit for grades 2 and 3, the brain and emotions. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the unit, 10 minutes or less, get a sense of what you're going to do for the next 15 days in science. So the big overview is that students are going to be looking at the brain, and then how does the brain affect emotions, and then how can we use some of the science around learning to help us kind of manage and work with those emotions a little bit. So then roughly speaking, this is not purely the way it is, but roughly speaking, week 1, introduction to the brain, then the driving question, like what are we going to be doing for this unit? Week 2, neuroplasticity, the idea that our brain is actually very plastic and a lot of learning can happen, not just new content, but even the way we behave can change significantly. Week 3, how can the brain help us regulate our emotions? So how can we use some of this knowledge about plasticity and some of the parts of the brain and how and what they do, how can we use that to help to regulate those emotions that we're feeling and we deal with? And then we got some practices. So we're going to do some fun engineering activities just to give students an opportunity to feel some emotions, right? And then the reflection piece will always be on how did you feel, where did you feel the emotions in your body, things like that. I did want to let you know I put in here under key resources my email and my cell phone. I am not working in the month of July. However, if I am in town and I'm available, I'd be happy to take a phone call and try to help you out. But I do like to go backpacking, so I do have a couple trips planned, but mostly on the weekends, so that shouldn't be hopefully too bad. So one of the things I just want to shout out about with the emotions part, and you probably already know this, or maybe you don't, but I mean, many of you educators in general kind of have an understanding about emotions and how our students feel, but some of the work that I've been doing lately is understanding that emotions are a normal part, and there is no good or bad emotion like anger, sadness, fear. Those things aren't bad in and of themselves. They may feel uncomfortable or unpleasant, but they aren't bad emotions. It is totally normal to feel those things. But it's really important for us to differentiate between emotions and the behaviors that happen from those emotions sometimes. And that's the part that we're trying to retrain. So we're not trying to train the brain to not feel sad or to not feel angry. We're trying to figure out how to manage the behaviors, really, that sometimes stem from certain emotions. So so I just want to make sure I throw that out and we get that under there pretty quickly. Key practices, science practices to understand before teaching. This unit, I actually honestly struggled a little bit for kind of the anchoring phenomenon and driving question board and to use the tools of science to learn science. This was hard for me to do. There is a video here that talks about it, but I actually struggled to figure out how to really do this because we can't do as many hands-on things with the brain itself. It was a little bit more challenging. So there's more videos and things like that in there. I'm just going to put that out just to say that. So sorry. I'll try to keep thinking about it, but I couldn't figure out exactly how to make that work. One thing that is very important is I do label the lessons. So I have must do, should do, and aspire to do parts of each lesson. We'll show that more. There's a longer video over here explaining how that works, but we'll talk a little bit about it when we get into the lessons itself. Materials, there isn't many materials for this, depending on some of the activities that you might do, but for the most part, they are there. I will say that I'm definitely going to make sure you have the brain models from the ESD library that we have, but there is also an optional skull kit that, like animal skulls. If you are interested in that, if you want to have real animal skulls in the classroom, I'm happy to set you up with those too. So just either reach out through anybody to get to me or use my email, and I'm happy to get those for you. All right, so brief overview. Week 1, again, we're just kind of getting things started, starting to look at the brain. There's a couple options in here. You can see I've got must do, should do, and aspire to do in this first day. So the must do's are that anchoring phenomenon, and I'm going to use the model of the brain as the anchoring phenomenon for this one. You may have to share with the 2nd and 3rd grade teacher a little bit. There are 3 models, so I'm not sure how you want to share those, if you just want to do science at different times, so that way one person can have all 3 brains at the same time. And And then the other thing I wanted to show in here is there is a video here of a real human brain. So if you think students are ready for that and you think they might be interested in that, it is quite an anchoring phenomenon to look at a real human brain. This particular one, this first one under the should do, is fairly dry. It's a university professor, and they're not real exciting. What I would probably recommend to do is to start it at 1 minute, 11 seconds and go to around 7 minutes, but just turn off the sound. We don't need to listen to that person talk about the brain, but just have the students like, what do you see? How do you notice? What do you see? How does it look compared to the models of the brain? Just get them asking questions. Like, that's a huge part of science. It's just like, what do you see and what do you wonder about, right? Getting that stuff going. There is a more kid-friendly version here that's more engaging, but it does more explaining, and you may or may not, it's not always ideal to explain in the beginning. It's good to get them to be thinking and really asking questions in the beginning. All right, so I talked about the animal skulls down here. So then I'm not going to go through every day like that, but I just want to make sure you understand there is kind of, not every day will have a must do, should do, and aspire to do. But these images here, these are full-size images, so I just put them in there and shrunk them down so they would fit, but you can copy those and paste those into a slideshow if you want to display them to the students. They can be printed out if you want to have a printout for students, things like that. And then here's like a way to learn about the brain. But again, you can kind of watch those little videos and figure out what that is talking about. Yeah, so again, must do. Sometimes there's a couple must do's in a day, should do. And then there's some kind of sensory activity to do on the first week here. And then week 2, we really start to get into the emotional part. What do emotions look like, feel like? We start to talk about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And the amygdala hijack is something, but we don't actually use that word, amygdala hijack. Oftentimes people will use flipping your lid is a real common way for people to refer to this conversation. But getting students to start naming emotions, I think, is really important. Are they happy? Are they angry? Are they sad? Are they just kind of pleasant, content? So high energy at the top, low energy, high pleasantness, low pleasantness. Again, not good, bad, not those things. Am I feeling good? Am I feeling bad? But more like where's your energy level and where's your pleasantness level? And then kind of getting them to start to touch into their, starting to connect in with their feelings, their physical feelings in their body. So you might ask them things like, oh, well, when you're angry, where do you feel that in your body? What does it feel like? Just to get them to kind of start talking about that. Will definitely come up a lot more in the future. Again, no right or wrong answers. Everybody's a little different on that. Okay. So then you got an emotion sorting game, and then you have brain advertisements where the students are kind of do this. They're going to create an ad for why their brain is so amazing. Really try to focus on the positives of their brain. Here are some things that they may choose to say about their brain. And they can create little posters, and you can get a little cutout of the brain. They can color it and then add some words here or pick other pictures if they wish. So that's that. This particular video, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala video, will kind of be used throughout in small chunks. So you just kind of start with this piece of it. And then I start throwing in some of these engineering design challenges to have an opportunity for students to get some emotions. Oftentimes, frustration, excitement, these are a normal part of these activities, especially if you bring in competition. You don't have to bring in competition. I actually recommend you don't. You just talk about how tall of a tower can you make, kind of thing. But again, the whole point is to reflect on those emotions that they felt. And then, and at this point, we're not talking about how do you regulate them, but just making sure we're pointing them out and looking at them. So lots of little activities, neuroplasticity. So how does the brain learn? The fact that the brain can learn really complicated, weird things like this pinky thumb activity. There's also paint the fence and wash the windows. These are just some activities that challenge the brain to do things. That can be a lot of fun and can quickly show students that, oh, wait, no, I can actually, this thing that at the beginning seemed absolutely impossible is something that you can do. There's a kind of high order video here on neuroplasticity that you may or may not want to do. Week 3, we're starting to get into that, more into that flipping your lid stuff, and how do you get the brain back into control? So what are some of those strategies that you can use? And one of the things that we'll be doing, it's not mentioned here, but you'll be creating a strategy wall, basically, like a set of posters that students can use to refer to, like, hey, when I'm feeling this way, here's an activity I can do, like box breathing or something like that. Is your mind like a garden? So like, what are the things that you need for your garden to grow, your brain garden to grow? Is it like water? Water is actually something. Sleep is something. Who are people that help to nourish your garden, things like that. FYI, the first and second grade, the K1 grader students they're actually growing little plants. And so this might be kind of a cool thing to like go visit them and see the plants that they're growing, and then maybe have the second, third graders talk about how they're learning about emotions and how that's similar to growing plants. Up to you, but that's an option. That's the Aspire to Do down here. So then creating a feeling fingerprint map, where students start to point out, really draw a map of where they feel things in their bodies. This could be done earlier if that feels right to you. I debated whether I would put it later or earlier. That's some more activities, bubble breathing, horizontal tower. This is a very challenging design challenge, but again, the point is to create some emotions. And then we get into week 4, it's really kind of solidifying that wall of calming practices, getting some posters together to share at the Mercado. And button pushers is actually an optional. All the rest of this is optional, day 13, 14. And then 15, of course, just getting ready and set up for it. So that's the unit. Again, it's really trying to link between the brain and understanding how our brain affects our emotions, and then how can we use some of these strategies to manage and help us to regulate the behaviors that can stem sometimes from those emotions. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Mercado. Take care.